Nice to meet you guys. I'm Lena, doing the account management at Amsterdam Berlin. Happy to be here today. And you are?
Yes, and I'm Moritz. I'm creative director and founder of Amsterdam Berlin, and also from me, thank you very much for having us. And yeah, that's us. As you can see, we have our offices in Amsterdam and Berlin, hence the very creative name. We prepared a little presentation for you about a recent project we've done, which I think is just a nice showcase of radically, creatively executed work. So maybe do I get the clicker or are you clicking? Okay, so this is a project, maybe a few words to say beforehand. We work for, you've already named it, a few clients. We work for Porsche, we work for AMG, we work for Jägermeister, Adidas, Under Armour. But we also tend to do cultural projects that are self-initiated. So it's projects that are not based upon a brief, but projects that we base on culturally relevant topics that we find interesting, important, or both. And then we tend to set them up ourselves. It's a forefront investment that we take as an agency. But then we find collaborative partners to work with and to bring these projects to life. We always have a big PR part on these projects. And I think this is the most recent one. We've done a few of them in the past. And yeah, that's the last one we did. It's called LMG GT #1. And it's about gender equality in motorsports. So we have a protagonist, which is this young lady. She's called Laura Marie Geisler, a German race car driver from Munich. She's now not 23 anymore. She's actually 25, I think, by now. And she's driving a Porsche Sprint Challenge, and she's a very talented driver. However, there's always problems around her looks and around her appearance, you know, and when you have sponsorships, you have to go for dinner with the sponsor, and then, you know, they tend to get a bit touchy and a bit, you know, it's difficult for women in motorsports to sometimes deal with these situations because it's an extremely male-dominated sport. More than most other sports, and as a female driver, you're often reduced to your looks, to your appearance, and that was the starting point of the projects. Basically, Laura's a friend of mine, and we talked about it, and she told me something that I found quite shocking or quite interesting, which was that she said when she started to drive for Sprint Challenge, somebody in her race team said to her, you know, don't worry so much about your times, about the times that you're driving, about your race results. With the way that you look, we're going to be able to market you beautifully anyways. And that's, of course, a shit statement for an athlete, right? That's not something you want to hear. So that was the starting point for the project. And the idea was quite simple. We said, okay, we need to draw attention to the problem. And then we thought maybe we can use the NFT technology, which is, you know, often just hype bullshit, but you can actually use the technology in very interesting ways. So we thought, well, maybe we can use this technology to empower Laura Marie to empower herself. So no more looking pretty for the press, no more bowing to the sponsors, the first self-empowered female racer. So this now takes you through it in a kind of like a shortcut how we did that. So we started with the car. And Porsche had this car in the 70s, which was called the Pig. That originated from the engineering of the car. So the car was built for the 24-hour race in Le Mans. And the engineers looked at the car when it was finished and they said, well, it looks kind of fat and it has this short snout and actually it looks a bit like a pig. So yeah, Porsche was a very radical and cool brand back then, maybe even a bit cooler than they are now. And they said, well, fuck it, you know, if it looks like a pig, let's make it a pig. So they painted the car pink and put a butcher's map on it, and they raced this car in Le Mans, which of course became a huge thing. So we said, well, maybe we can do something with that, and we based our race car design on this race legend. We call it the LMG GT #1. LMG stands for Laura Marie Geisler. GT is, well, Gran Turismo is the race series, and #1 because it has a big NFT part, and in the NFT world you tend to number assets. So our car, we basically took inspiration from the pig, but we replaced the butcher's map with the lines that plastic surgeons use for their operations. So we wanted to, with this car, create a symbol for the pressure that rests on the appearance of female athletes, especially in the motorsport world. So we designed this car. This is how it looks. We took actually samples from Laura's Instagram account from numerous photos, and this is a mashup of skin tones that we sampled from her pictures. And then the lines are the lines that plastic surgeons used. As I said, each line represents a cut, each arrow a direction in which you pull the skin, and the crosses, and that we found quite interesting, the crosses in plastical surgery mark the points of maximum pressure. So that was the car. When we had the design, the NFT part came later, so we first designed the car and thought like, well, maybe we just do a, big PR campaign around the car, and we, spread the design, and with this create awareness for the pressure that rests on female athletes in the motorsport game. And then we said, well, actually, we could also, instead of doing that and then looking for the right sponsors for her, we could also say, fuck all of this. We're going to create a completely new decentralized sponsoring approach, which allows an athlete to withdraw entirely from the sponsoring game and basically fund themselves. So this way, this is how the project was then structured. So we said, okay, we make the car as an NFT, and then the proceeds are used for Laura to finance her own racing career, which is completely uncommon. It's never been done. Normally with racing, yes, there are people that, sell screws and make millions with it, or have a chain of butcheries or whatever, and then they say, oh, I want to do motorsports, and then they just buy themselves a motorsports team and they race. But professional racers, normally it always works through sponsoring. So this was a quite new approach. So as I said it before, to make these projects in a big fashion, you need partnerships. Without it, it's completely impossible. If you attempt to do something, my advice would be don't do it without partnerships, because it's just very hard nowadays, I think, and it's also kind of pointless. So we always rely on our partnerships to get these projects to fly. So in this case, well, it was us. We were the initiator. We came up with the idea. It was, of course, Laura Marie Geisler as our protagonist. It was The Mill. Some of you might know them. They're a huge 3D production house from London. They're now also in Berlin and in Los Angeles. We then had Porsche, who joined in later. In the beginning, we talked to them. We're like, we want to do this. They all found it super nice in the marketing department. Then they were also like, yeah, if you want to do it in a radical fashion, might be good to do it on your own. So we did. They joined in later. I'm going to explain later how that worked. Then we had Mai Kuzawa. She's the daughter of a famous Japanese race car driver. And she's one of the only women that is kind of like in the racing and pop culture world. And she's a friend of the agency, and so she joined in as a kind of patroness to stand behind the project. Our partners from Race Service Los Angeles, it's a partner agency we work with. They come from the motorsports and racing world, but they also have an agency. They have a very cool office in LA where they basically build race cars, but then next to the car lift with a race car on it, they have their conference table. So it's one of the few agencies that specializes in this kind of field, and they're very cool guys, and they also helped us a lot with this project. We then had some other partners that I will talk about later in the presentation. And then this was the press partners we had for the launch. So we always do a lot of press work, but we always have some partners that we really invite to be part of the project from the beginning. And we launched this whole thing on High Snobiety. Then Hypebeast joined in a little bit later, also wrote a big piece about it. We've also had it on Hype Bay. And O32C, which some of you might know as well, is a fashion magazine from Berlin. They also wrote a portrait about Laura, which is in the current issue. So this was like these were the biggest and most important partners of the project. We then, I've just said the mill was partnering, so we launched with a film. And in this film, we kind of presented the design in 2 phases. First was a teaser phase, where we just showed the teaser on High Snobiety, on our channels, on some other channels, and then we launched with this film. And I'm just going to play it now. We also went through great lengths with that. But as I said, in partnerships, this film, the mill made entirely for free. So we didn't pay anything for it. They went in with a quite big resource, as you will say now, because this film is like 90 seconds, 100% CGI. And then we worked with Universal Music to get the music done for this. Some of you might recognize it. Yeah, and that's the film. Yes, so like I said, we wanted to present the car in a context where it's not on the racetrack, where it's not actually, you know, in the usual racing context, but on a surgery table in this kind of futuristic abstract surgery environment. The song, some of you might have recognized it, is Barbie Girl. Great hit from the 90s, which we remade in a piano version with a composer we often work with. Universal was kind enough to help us out a little bit and not charge millions of bucks for it. But yeah, so that's how we launched, or you know, with the film we launched in the press. We then presented the project at South by Southwest, where we did a quite big activation with Porsche, and we actually presented the project on the stage. So, you know, moderators, there's Laura, I was on stage. This is Johan from Lincoln Park in the middle, who's an investor in the blockchain company we launched with. And that's how we then launched the project physically. Actually, the press came a bit later, but that was kind of the official project kickoff. We did it deliberately with Porsche and at the Porsche activation, because that way they kind of were drawn into it immediately as well. The talk was perceived extremely well. We got a lot of press all over the world with this, and Porsche then also joined in and posted the livery on their channel, which was a huge deal because they normally don't do that, and being on the Porsche Instagram channel gives you huge visibility, because they have 26 million very active followers. So that was of course nice for the project. So now to the NFT part. So basically this is the starting point NFT. We started to launch in April with some NFT helmets you could buy on unblock.com. It's a flow-based blockchain company that is focusing on people that are not really in the NFT game. So it's very mass audience. You can buy the NFTs with a credit card. So that's where we launched. We now, 2 weeks ago, launched the second phase where you can basically buy the car. So this is a one-of-one NFT, but there's 1,000 shares. They're not very expensive, they're $60, and that's how you enter the project. So if you buy the NFT, you enter the project, and that allows you then to get further perks. I'm going to come into that a bit later, but that's basically the entrance NFT. This is an asset that when you have the first NFT, this will get airdropped to you later. In 2 weeks, we're going to do an airdrop to all holders that have this membership NFT. They will get this one for free. Basically looks like that. Digital version of the car. Sorry. The glitches are on purpose. Yeah, I'm just going to show you a few assets we created. So this is a race suit we made, which is from digital high-tech fiber. What is kind of interesting, we put scalpels around the neck. So another symbol of the, you know, the environment you're racing in as a woman. It's a very hostile and sometimes not very cool environment to be in. So we picked up the language from the beauty operation car, and we have these rotating scalpels around the neck of the NFT race suit. These are the helmets we created. Some of them already launched, some of them are going to launch soon. So this is on the left is the basic one that she's also wearing in real life in her races. We're in 3 weeks coming out with a partnership with DressX. DressX is the largest platform for wearable NFTs, so NFTs that you can actually wear on social media, that you can wear in the metaverse. And they're going to launch this helmet that you can actually wear in your social media profiles in the metaverse, etc. So that's the next step, and then there's going to be a collection of 1,111 helmets, I think, that are different variations of this helmet, right? So you have a shattered one, you have pixelated ones, and these you will get early access to if you have the previous NFTs. So if you have the entrance NFTs, you get a pre-sale on these, etc., etc., etc. And the designs, some of them get quite wild. There's a neon one in the middle, and we had like a scribbled one. There's a lot of them. This is just some examples. But then you also get special perks. So the one on the left, for example, the yellow one, is in collaboration with ADAC, which is the biggest motor club in, it's not a motor club, it's the official German motor club, I guess. Is that how you call them? So when your car breaks in the middle of the road, then they come and they help you, those guys. So this is a collaboration with them, which means then with them you get extra perks. So when you buy this NFT, later on you get like, oh, you have this NFT, now you get entrance to a real life race sponsored by ADAC. So there is real life perks, which I'm coming to now. So with the NFTs, what we wanted to do, first of all, yes, it's interesting because you can show your support for Laura and you can, as a fan, directly engage with her. But we said we don't want to just make an NFT that you collect and then you have it and basically that's it. So what you get when you hold the NFT is you get free airdrops, which is basically like the first one with the neon tubes that I've shown you. So you get free NFTs and tokens that we just drop to you as a thank you. When Laura wins a race, we drop an extra NFT, for example. Token-gated race GoPro. That means when you have the NFT, we have a GoPro in her race car, so you can actually join the races, co-pilot. So you get a live stream where you can actually be in the car during the races. By the way, Laura's actually today racing her first race. And so on. There's community treasure, where we say 75% of all NFT incomes get invested in Laura's motorsport career. 25% of them will be donated, actually. There's autograph cards that we send to NFT holders. There's post-race briefings where after the race you always have a meeting with the team and the people that hold the NFTs can join in. So actually you really create an engaged community, a fan base where you allow through the NFT technology to get access to Laura and to her racing and actually become part of the story. And that's where we think the NFT technology becomes very interesting. So this is just like to show you there's like a time plan where we say drop 1 is on April 22nd, where we drop the car. Then on May 22nd, we drop the suits. June 22nd, the racing club helmets, etc. So this is all phased out. So there's like a whole planning behind it, how this is orchestrated. Yeah, like I said, the press picked it up very well. We had it on Hypebeast and High Snobiety to launch with. Then Porsche picked it up, went behind it, which is super nice because it gives you the official seal of approval. Yeah, and then as you see afterwards, it went pretty nuts. I think we had like 180 million impressions so far with this project. So it really went quite viral, if that's still a term. But yeah, so. We then afterwards, PlayStation approached us, said like, hey, we saw this, would be super cool. Why don't we put the livery in Gran Turismo 7? And I think that's a super nice example of how these projects that you start with nothing, with just an idea, and with the own agency resources. And we're 12 people, we're not a huge agency, right? We don't have millions to spend. But we had a good idea and we put a lot of effort and power and manpower and craft into it. And you know, also with partnerships, you can make a project like that fly on a very, very high level. So now the car is actually available in Gran Turismo and people can play it on the PlayStation. And that looks like this. Yeah, so I think that's just a nice example of how these ideas get adapted into pop culture, you know, and that should always be the goal when you do these kind of projects. And we could have done this for Porsche, right? We did it because we thought it was a cool idea and because we wanted to do it. I have to also be honest, originally we started by saying, well, let's make a cool race car design, 2-week project. It now took, I think, 1 year almost. So, you know, it started a little bit smaller, but still, you know, when you do these projects with passion and with good partnerships, you can bring them into a quite high league, and it's not really dependent on how big you are as an agency, I think. Yeah, the Let's Race, like I said, Laura's actually today winning, hopefully winning, her first race in the car we designed. So the car that we made, now we have enough money in to finance the first race. And she's actually in the car we made on the racetrack today, driving for her first victory, hopefully. So yeah, it's quite nice to see that, of course, because it was an experiment and this one worked. We're not at the end of the story. Today's the first race. There's 6 to come, but so far it's looking quite good. And I think that's already the end of our little presentation. And yeah, I hope it was... Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Would you like to join us?
Thank you so
here?
much. We would like to invite you. Our role here as moderators would be to kind of bridge the gap between all the awesome stuff that you showed us and what's relevant kind of for our market.
Yeah.
And first, I want to start by asking the audience, by show of hands, who has bought an NFT or owns an NFT at this particular moment? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have, okay, 6. So quite a bit of conservative audience in terms of acquiring digital assets. Maybe the first question would be regarding this small survey that we just carried out. Would be, did you ever target like a broader audience, or you've had a very concrete person in mind who is going to back the project? Because it kind of the Venn diagram between somebody who is engaged with car racing, women's rights, and NFT kind of gets probably a bit shrunk.
Yeah, but it's not really what it's about in the end. What it's about is to create awareness for a problem, right? And I think that in itself is already valuable. What we then wanted to do is offer a solution. It's not just say, well, this is bad, but say this is bad and this is how you can solve it, right? So in the end, we don't need to make millions with that, right? We need 1,000 people to buy into the NFTs. And ultimately, you know, I think, yes, you're right, the intersection when you say you have to be a motorsport fan, you have to be a feminist, and you have to be an NFT collector, then it becomes super small. But I just think you have to be a
generally
decent,
a good person.
Yeah, you have to be a good person, and then you see that this world at the moment is a bit fucked up, and it also doesn't mean that everybody in motorsports is evil and horrible. It's just, you know, an old tradition, and it's still a bit lopsided. So I think it's just drawing awareness to this, and I think if you say something's faulty, it's just consequent if you say, and this is how a possible solution could look like, right? It could also be that some brand says, well, we as Procter & Gamble now sponsor only women's sports. Not 10% of our budget, we only sponsor women's sports, which also would be economically probably a very good thing to do. You know, because you could probably put the budget that you put in other sports in saying like, okay, we sponsor all women's sports in Europe, and you would probably be able to do that.
And grow a whole new category.
You know?
Guys, this is FARA. You've been here for a very short time, but this is FARA. This is how to say our checkpoint. This is where the industry gathers. We see what everybody is doing. But do you have some impressions? Do you have something to say about it so far, even though for only this short time?
Of the work, of the festival, of the coffee. I don't know.
The rain.
No, I think it's great. We got some time earlier, and you showed us all the cases that are exhibited here, and I think there's such nice work. I mean, most of it we don't get it if it's like a storytelling or headline thing. But I think the one idea you showed us with the train taking the people to the countryside, I think it was a beer brand who did that.
Pirinsku, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is also a really nice and engaging idea, almost like similar to something. I think it's always nice if you have this engaging part or component to an idea.
It's favorite of mine too.
Huh?
It's favorite of mine too. So, but this is also part of the idea what we gather here, driving creative excellence. It might sound a little bit pretentious, but I want to ask you, how do you achieve and maintain this level of creativity, and how do you plan a project when we are facing such weird times and some other difficulties?
Yeah, because you have so much execution, so many channels, so many different avenues in which the campaign is going. It's almost like seems pretty much unmanageable in terms of if you're planning all of these things ahead.
I think there's a couple of answers to that. I think first of all, a project like this, like I said, it was a year of work. We invested a lot of time and resource, and it's really a collaborative project. It would be completely wrong to say we did this. Yes, we initiated it, but there were so many people that worked on it. Without this, it would have never been possible. And I think that's collaboration is the key to future excellence. I really firmly believe that, because doing something alone, yes, some things you can do alone, but almost all our projects that we do, paying projects, right, where we make money and where we pay our bills, I don't think we have one client that I don't like, and I don't think we have one project where I would say like this is really shit work. And the reason for that, I think, is that we are quite radical with that. We also say no to a lot of things. We also don't, when we feel like, okay, this is not the right project for us, we don't do it, right? And if you do that for a longer time, then people don't come to you for things that you don't want to do, because then, you know, they will not ask you for things that you're not known for. So I think that's one thing. And then we always start with strategy. We always start with research. We always start with looking at the consumer. We always start with building a strong foundation, right? We build a strong foundation, and when you have the strong concrete foundation in the floor properly cemented, then you can go and build glass castles on it with little towers and little horses made from glass.
Because this
But also
campaign seems, I'm sorry, and this campaign seems quite data-driven in terms of the research that you have done previously. Because you have a lot of information, a lot of data points in terms of what's happening within the internet with the NFT markets and whatever. Was that part of the preparation for the?
But that's for anything we do, for every project we do, for every Porsche project, we do a lot of brand building work in the venture segment. So we build startups from scratch. So that starts with naming and then CI work, et cetera, et cetera. So really building brands. It always starts with strategy, and it always starts with doing our research and looking at the numbers, because I think the worst mistake that people can make is doing creative work just for its own purpose, right? Creative work just to be creative work is useless. We're doing communication. In the end, we're not doing art. If you want to do art, then, you know, do art. If you want to do communication, I think the creativity needs to serve a purpose. and needs to serve a communicative and in the end a commercial purpose. Be it awareness, be it sales, whatever it may be, right? In the end, it needs to solve a problem. And that's why we always start with, what's the problem? How do we strategically set the foundation? And then you can go nuts on the creative, because then you're not in danger of doing something that people
You have the foundation, basically.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then I also feel you can branch out into more things because you have this solid foundation, and it just makes sense. As here with Gran Turismo and stuff like that, you can just go into more directions because the idea in itself works and it has a strong foundation. And I think that's what we experience a lot of times, that there are so many options and also partners you can collaborate with that work in the same direction or have the same strategical approach.
What it allows you to do is it allows you to focus, right? When you see our presentation, how we normally our presentations, when we present work to clients, is we try to create a funnel that allows only one solution in the end. It's a logic funnel, right? You say like, okay, we start here because of this being like that and that needs to be like this, and then that needs to be like this, and it makes it forces the logic flow into a funnel where in the end you say, and that's why the creative idea is like that. And then you don't talk about, oh, I like this film or I don't like this film. It's not so important. You say like, okay, this is the idea based on this strategic proposition, and then you can do whatever creatively in the end if you first have an agreement with the client, with the brand on this is what we want to do and this is how we want to do it. And then you can do Gran Turismo collaborations, or you can make NFTs, or you can sell t-shirts. You know, then it becomes based on something that's fact and not taste. I think that what a lot of agencies do wrong is that they put the creativity on a holy pedestal. It's like, this is...
Yeah, but you mentioned something about like knowing which clients to look for you because you do a specific thing. I don't know if everybody has had the chance to look at your portfolio, but you have a
Probably not.
Yeah, you have a pretty specific tone of voice in terms of like presenting certain brands. There is a like kind of a punk aesthetic to what you're doing with using photography and using, like, for example, Johnny Rotten as a like face for like dental care, or Vinnie Jones as a symbol of peace and quiet, and
yeah,
like
but
whatever.
that's
There is some kind of subversive thinking going on. Is that like part of the way that the brand, your brand as an agency, wants to be perceived and contacted? Is there?
No, I don't think so, because it's just me. That's just me. If I die tomorrow, there's going to be someone else, and maybe they're going to say like, hey, we need to be super soft in our tone.
Where is the consistency? Where is the
I think
consistency of you as a brand, as an agency?
Yeah, I think the consistency is that we do work that tries to be relevant to people, and we do work that doesn't try to communicate at people, but actually become part of a cultural conversation and add a relevant aspect to it. You just named Johnny Rotten, Jinx Monsoon. You know, Johnny Rotten is somebody that is a big part of popular culture for ages, right? And the way we did that is we were approached by a small company, a startup that makes sonic toothbrushes, and they wanted to go to the UK. Right? They were like, oh, we have no money. And I mean, most of you will know this line. We have no money, but we need something that works really well. So yeah, we said like, well, that's fantastic. But then we had a good idea. We said, I read in the Rolling Stone magazine at some point that Johnny Rotten is actually, I don't know if all of you know him, he's from the Sex Pistols, lead singer of the Sex Pistols. And Johnny Rotten is called Johnny Rotten because of his rotten teeth, because he actually had green teeth. So we went to London and we met with Johnny Rotten and his manager, who's of course called Rambo Stevens. So we met Johnny and Rambo, who are both in their 60s, but still have like, you know, this like bit transparent, but very pink hair still. And we met them in a small studio in Soho. They had to be paid in cash and picked up in a Rolls Royce. And we made this film where Johnny talks for 2.5 minutes about his fucked up teeth that almost killed him. which sounds funny, but it's actually true. He almost died because of blood poisoning and abscesses he had in
And
his
the
bones. And he tells you for 2.5 minutes in a very entertaining and fun way how important it is to take good care of your teeth. You know, and that is a simple execution that allows a company that's not famous, that doesn't have a lot of money, to enter through a pop cultural angle that gives you a very simple message, right? And we always try to do work that has some element like that, you know?
And how do you frame the brief for a project like this? Like
How do you? Sorry?
How do you frame the brief for a project like this? Because every project starts with a brief and whatever. How do you write it internally for a project like, for example, the Johnny Rotten one and fixing his fucked up teeth?
Well, the Johnny Rotten one, the client called and said we need to sell toothbrushes, and that was the first idea we had, or I had on the phone, and then we did that. So
There was no
so that
brief
was
then.
a very short process. They called us, they told me that. I said, let's do that with Johnny Rotten, and then
So
they said,
what
yeah.
does the head of account do?
I would say normally
Normally,
we
it's
would
different.
start a brief, obviously with a rebrief with the client to get all the details, to then put it into strategy. And in strategy, sorry, and in the strategy, as Moritz also said earlier, we tend to do like what are other good case studies, or also what is the other field where this worked, which is not like directly connected to the brand, and look at that and see what we can take from this. So I think this strategy really is our basis.
Yeah, always. And to answer that a bit more, or elaborate on that a little bit, we get the information from the client, right? You collect the information and you put it into the strategy department. And the strategy department is there to take as much information as possible, condense it, build the strategic thinking. But then when it comes into the creative department, the idea is mostly there.
It's already there.
Well, it's a strategic idea, but it's an idea. And the so-called creative springboards in our agency are very precise and very direct and very good, which is also due to my partner Vincent, who isn't here today, but who's a brilliant strategist and creates fantastic strategy work that then allows the creative to really think about, okay, how do we bring this to life in a fantastic way? So a lot of the ideation already takes part in the strategic department. The creative department then thinks about, okay, how do I turn this into a film? How do I turn this into a great social activation? How do I make an event from that, right? But there's a hard core that's already there that you can use and work on, and that really helps.
And I think also, sorry, just to add to that, and I think also that we always take care that we really have a close tie to that. So if we realize in the process that the idea is like thought around the corner, do you say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
That like it's not straight anymore. You as a creative, you get it because you worked on it for like 2 months, but for somebody else who just sees it, like that's also, I think, what we kind of look for, that it's like the clear tie to the strategy.
So you actually give the tools to your creative team to be creative and not to bother to go deep inside, and just you give them like the freedom, let's
Riddles.
say. Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question is regarding specifically the campaign. We talked about this a little bit in a preparatory conversation, so to speak. NFTs are obviously trendy. They're something like kind of a buzzword, even if people are not sure how they work or whatever. Do you think that those type of things, because you told me that you do like mostly digital stuff, like communicating through digital, do you think that doing that, using those kind of words and like hopping on trends or using trends is a requisite to become like for a successful campaign, or are you using like the technology behind of the NFT as a platform for the campaign?
Honestly, I think you just need to be timely in your execution, right? You just need to be at the pulse of time with whatever you do if you want to be relevant. I'm personally not a huge NFT collector, but I think it's interesting to look at a technology like that and say like, hey, how can that be used in an interesting way? So I think just creating a lot of cats in spacesuits and saying like, hey, but guys, buy all of my cats in spacesuits, and if you're lucky, they're going to be worth more money than you paid. For me, that's super boring, right? But actually using this technology to allow something like this becomes interesting. And so to answer your question a bit more precisely, I think no, we don't build our ideas on that, but we tend to, of course, try to use things that are, you know, reflecting the technology and
But we would never do like an NFT just for the sake of
No.
it.
No.
So
No. So yeah, no. But of course, I mean, we're also not completely immune to that, of course. And 8 years ago, we also launched a content campaign called a content format called the Berlinians, when everybody was talking about content being the new thing, you know. Then you found out that in on the quality level we produce film, it's not very efficient and it's very hard to make money with that. And now the Berlinians is not a big content magazine. It's actually more of like my personal archive collection. But, you know, it's also important to try out things, right? It's important to try things, and it's important to fail with things. And you know, as long as you can look at them yourself and say like, yeah, this was cool, I like that still, you know, then that's nice, you know. But I think it's okay also to try things that aren't ginormous success stories, you know, that are just cool and you tried it, and yeah, maybe not all of them work, right? And
That's true. But to get to this success, you have to have the right partners in front of you, partners in terms of clients as well.
Yes.
So if sometimes the idea happens on the phone for a toothbrush campaign, how do you usually approach your clients? Do you involve them in early stages? Do you just create everything and you go and present and get this, how to say, a little bit shocking, you wait for this surprise element? How do you do that?
I think first of all, we try to have a good relationship with our clients where we involve them and where we actually make them also a part of our process. So we do check-ins with them relatively often. So we have a briefing session, then we have a check-in halfway through the strategy, then it depends also which clients. Like for example, Porsche, we have an extremely good relationship with them. They trust us very much. So with them, we present the strategy. Afterwards, we present the creative, and then we go into execution. With other clients, we do more step-ins to make sure that they're aligned. And I think the worst thing you can do with your clients is to give them the feeling that they don't have a say in what you do. You know, on the other hand, of course, there's also a lot of clients that say like, well, what the fuck are you telling me? Just execute my shit and don't be annoying.
Show me,
Yeah,
show me the end.
you know,
Don't bother me.
and how do I make more money with that? So yes, I of course know that exists as well, and we've made a lot of sacrifice to kind of free ourselves from that, and are at a point where we kind of managed to do that through persistency and, you know, quite a lot of work. Yes, I think from my perspective, key is to really make sure people are involved and that you also hear people, you know, and that you also listen to people and try to decipher, okay, what do they actually mean? What do they actually want to tell you?
yeah, maybe also that you understand what's the political situation around them.
Yeah.
So if you have a good relationship with the client, you understand like who they have to approach or who they have to convince most and what's their purpose with this campaign. So if you know all these little things, you can also present better or take that into account and really, yeah, listen to that, as you said.
I wanted to ask, it's kind of weird coming from somebody who's on the creative side, but is there a specific metric that you use to judge the success of a campaign, like internally, not for the KPIs for the client or whatever, just for you to kind of know that you're on the right track in terms of what you're doing? Is there something specific that you follow when you execute a campaign afterwards, or whatever, that you said, okay, if this happened and people are talking, for example, there are comments under this video or whatever, like this worked?
I think
is it the quality of the conversation that you create or the quantity?
I think there's, sorry, is it the quality or the quantity?
No, this is just an example.
Okay.
If we take a conversation as a metric of how successful was the campaign.
I understand. No, I think what we tend to do, or what our recipes, I think you have to be able to explain an idea in one sentence. If you take 5 sentences to explain an idea, it's probably not very good. And people will not give you the time. Nobody will sit there and wait for you to finish your essay about why this is a great idea. If you can't convince somebody in one sentence that something's interesting, it's probably not. And I think then when you go into execution, for example, even with this campaign, right? High Snobiety, we're very close with the car editor, Jonathan Schley. He's a good friend of mine, and he wrote the first piece, which I think was brilliantly written. He's a really, really good, he has a consulting background. He wrote a brilliant piece about this project to launch with. His editor comes back and is like the 90-second full CGI film that the Mill created, where we made a remake of Barbie Girl, and that is probably worth €500,000 if you would pay for it. The editor, probably some 23-year-old kid from High Snobiety, came back, like, yeah, Jonathan, the article is great, but do we have to use the video? And you're kind of like, fuck, you know, but it shows you how people think in the digital space, right? If we could have not done the video, it would have been totally fine. You just need a strong key visual, in this case, the car. You need to be fast. You need to create things that are fast, that are easily recognized, that are also recognizable, that people will remember, and are easily shareable, and where people say, oh, fuck, have you seen this beauty operation car? That was super cool. It stands for gender equality in motorsports. You know, and then you create something that's iconic and that allows people to talk about it, to share, to, like, you know, if you need like half an hour to explain, like, forget it. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, I saw this cool idea and it was about this and it was about that. I'm not sure if it was really about that too, but so I think being on the point, being simple in both your idea and also in your visual communication is important. And I think all of our ideas try to do that.
But what is the metric you count on your success? There is
Sorry, I
specific
didn't answer the
metrics.
metric
So
question.
maybe
Sorry.
to that, I think, as said earlier, since we're looking for this pop cultural approach, for us it's also important to see afterwards, is it like, did the key opinion leaders that are not like random influencers, but like important to the different, I don't know, segment that we're in or whatever, are they talking about it? How are they talking about it? For example, we did, for Porsche, we did something to attract a new target audience, and on their Instagram channel we had some feedback on a video, which was obviously not by the new target audience because they still have the old target audience on the channel. So this feedback is not what you measure the campaign of. It's the feedback what like all the other who picked it up and talked about it, High Snobiety and stuff. And yeah, I think that's.
It's a bit like, you know, on a channel like the Porsche Global social media channel, you have, of course, have a lot of dentists, lawyers, you know, like guys in their 60s that can afford the cars and that are true Porsche fans. But then you make something with a rapper, and they of course, some of them will say, like, oh, you're making rapper cars now, and like, of course, you will have that, and that's normal, you know. But ultimately, I think it's about measuring. We use social listening tools, right? We use tools to really clearly look at, okay, how has this done? Was that successful or not? How was it? How did it perform in the digital space? And it's very easily measurable, right? And then you can also look for example, with this project, Porsche posts it, and then you see, okay, Arthur K. from L'Art de l'Automobile in Paris, which is a very close friend, used to be a very close friend of Virgil Abloh, is providing the cars for Kanye West and so on, has his own fashion collection and so on. Posts under it, hey, great work, guys, amazing. Automobili Amos, they do Missoni, and he makes like his own cars. The Futurista and so on also comments underneath, amazing, you know, and you see like, okay, how is it perceived by opinion leaders within the space, which is important, but then you can also just have the data where you say like, okay, this was looked at so many times and it was shared so many times, and then you can say like, okay, was this good or not? And then you can, of course, be the pissy creative director that says, yeah, but it was still good, you know, and yeah, but if people didn't like it, then maybe not so good.
We can open the floor for, I think, a couple of questions.
Of course.
If somebody has a question, аз ще стичам с микрофона на...
Everybody hungover?
Hey guys, do you have any questions? Okay.
Damn, we should have brought somebody ourselves, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, just in this case, I have a...
Nico!
He has a joke. He has a joke. He doesn't have a question.
Nico, do you have a joke for us?
Okay.
If you want to hear a great joke, go to Nico. He tells the best jokes.
Okay, so to close out the talk, how does, for example, this work relate to advertising festivals, and what's the best thing about them and the worst thing about them?
Well, I think the worst thing about them is that, to start with that, I mean, let's start with the best thing. The best thing is I built basically my whole career on them, so that was good for me personally. But I think the problem with ad festivals is that they were corrupted quite a lot in the past, because of course people also start to notice, oh, we can make a lot of money with this, you know. And I remember that the first Gold Lion I won, we ordered another one for the client, and then I saw the bill for it and saw that a copy Gold Lion costs €4,500. I was like, fucking hell, that's a lot of money for this thing. And
It's just a symbol of success, but it costs a lot, huh?
yeah, but the thing is, the problem is a little bit with the festivals, and I think it's important to be able to compete, and it's important especially for young creatives, that don't have the possibility to make the huge campaigns and work on the big Sony campaigns and work on the big Mercedes campaigns, to be able to, and that's what I mean when I said I built my career on this. I started like that. Like all my work was spec work, because of course when you're junior, you tend to not be able to say like, oh, let's make the new Mercedes campaign like this, you have like 3 steps above you, and to get to that level is difficult, right? So I made a lot of spec work, and then through that built my career. So I think award shows are valuable, but I think the problem is a little bit that it became a thing where people create a lot of fakes, and if you're a junior, do spec work, do as much fucking spec work as you can. I really can only recommend every junior creative that's frustrated, do it yourself, make the work, just write the ideas, find good young photographers, find good young directors, find cool illustrators, find the people, collaborate with them, and make the spec work. Put in the effort, make the spec work, send it to Cannes, get your agency to help you to send it to Cannes. Do these things, right? What I don't like is when we give each other awards and say like, hey, you've done that very well, here's an award, and you give me an award and I say thank you. It's a bit like the question is, how relevant is that? How relevant is it if one big agency gives another big agency a piece of a golden cow or a bronze pencil or whatever it may be, if the person on the street doesn't know the work and has never seen it and will never see it in their lives, right? And I had a traumatic experience where I was in New York and I had a date, and I had won my first line in Cannes, and I was like talking about it. I was like, yeah, and I've just come back from Cannes and I won this golden award, and she was very impressed. She was like, it's amazing, but but Cannes, that was like 6 weeks ago, no? And then I had to explain that there's another Cannes, which is not the real Cannes, but it's between the porn festival and the dentist convention. And that is a Cannes where advertising people give each other awards. And it felt so stupid that I was like, okay, wow, this is maybe not so relevant in the real world.
Okay, I think it's a great topic to close on that. So thank you so much.
I want to thank also Pumi for having us and bringing us here. Thank you very much. It was very kind of you.
Отиваме да пием кафета, водичка отпред и си продължаваме да си говориме. Оставаме за Q&A.
Ciao.
Чао, чао.